Hello, my name is Patrick Robertson, and this is a roundtable discussion on decolonizing psychology and practicing cross-cultural research. So let's get right into it. As American psychologist Al Duick said, Western psychology is indigenous to the West. Unfortunately, this isn't the perspective that has informed and tempered psychological cross-cultural research over the years. Indeed, New Zealand filmmaker Murata Mida put it best. The ones who are doing the looking are giving themselves the power to define. Western psychology assumed that its perspective was universal, central, and correct. Western psychologists lived under the assumption that Western psychological perspectives were the sun, that all other indigenous cultural perspectives, narratives, philosophies, explanations, and beliefs orbited. The tragedy of this short-sighted approach to psychological research and intervention is that Westernized psychology, devoid of indigenous philosophies and insight, fails to address the psychological foundations of the challenges it seeks to alleviate, and therefore it cannot provide a path forward for the communities it seeks to serve. The idea that Western psychology is central and all other psychological philosophical frameworks exist only in reference to the West can be seen in common cross-cultural research practices that have existed over the years. Indigenous research has historically been completed on rather than with Indigenous communities. Historically, researchers have used research methods that do not incorporate Indigenous knowledge, including community or cultural values. This lack of community involvement has resulted in data that were unusable by the communities. On the contrary, adapting methodology to meet Indigenous community expectations has produced methods that better incorporate Indigenous values, beliefs, and ways of knowing, which facilitates research that is respectful, collaborative, and relational. That being said, this field is still evolving, and more research with this starting point is needed to better understand how to include the Indigenous voice in the research process. Goals of research that is conducted in collaboration with Indigenous peoples might include revealing essential Indigenous knowledge, decolonizing psychology in methodology, practice, and application, rebalancing power dynamics and creating space for communities to participate in the research process, and providing informed methods of healing that meet the needs of the communities being served. This style of research has the potential to connect research back to the good of society. Community participatory research can be about more than the production of new knowledge. It can be part of the process of community healing. Some best practices when conducting cross-cultural research might include including methods that are culturally relevant and can serve beyond data collection to create relationships and support autonomy, developing a positive relationship with the community in which the research is taking place, equalizing and empathizing with the participants, which can lead to a culturally safe environment for participants, understanding that research is reciprocal, it's a give and a take, transforming qualitative research from a deficit-based perspective to a resilience-based perspective, including marginalized voices, practicing respect for all community members, presenting yourself to others face-to-face if possible, showing up, look, listen, and then speak. Let the community inform you on what you need to know rather than the other way around. Share and host people, be generous, be gracious, and be cautious. In general, cross-cultural research that values relationships offers more for the communities, families, and individuals it seeks to serve. Indeed, respectful, reciprocal, genuine relationships lay at the heart of community life and community development. My colleague Aaron had the opportunity to practice some of these methods in 4 rural villages in Ghana. Ghanaian psychology, largely westernized, has failed to incorporate cultural contextual factors into explanations of psychological phenomena and lacks integration of culturally specific philosophical positions on personality and causes of behavior. Ghanaian folk and philosophical psychologies have primarily been disregarded within clinical psychology practice in Ghana. In light of this, Erin and her team utilized a participatory community research method to collect data from adults across 4 diverse geographical areas in Ghana. The project began with full cooperation and involvement with the local tribal chief and associated councils. The community itself defined a need for understanding trauma, post-traumatic growth, and personality constructs from a Ghanaian perspective, rather than an imported Western perspective. Thus, the team based their research on local intellectual traditions rather than Western intellectual traditions. They incorporated folk and philosophical psychologies into Ghanaian psychological constructs. They've developed appropriate theories and models that reflect psychological phenomena in a Ghanaian cultural context. And they conceptualized African personality traits according to indigenous ideology. Participants were volunteers and recruited through word of mouth on the day of data collection, and data was collected verbally and by pencil and paper questionnaires. In addition, native speakers and translators were part of the data collection team. This study highlights the fact that community participatory research is possible. With global crisis and forced migration on the rise, community-level interventions have become increasingly imperative for mitigating the negative psychological consequences of large-scale traumatic events. Now more than ever, we as researchers have an opportunity to include the communities we seek to serve. I look forward to discussing this with you today.